Good evening, and welcome to the City of Topeka Planning Commission meeting. We are a commission appointed by the mayor and city council to plan for the orderly growth and development of the community, to hold public hearings, and to make recommendations to the governing body on planning items. Please note the governing body rules state that public hearings for planning cases shall be conducted solely by the Planning Commission. No additional public hearings will be conducted by the governing body. Tonight's cases are tentatively scheduled to be heard by the governing body next month. Agendas can be found at topeka.org. Some of tonight's cases involve public hearings. For those cases, the procedure will be as follows. First, the planning department staff will summarize the case. Next, we will hear from the applicant or the representative. Then we'll receive public testimony. Comments are limited to 4 minutes. For agenda items that do not involve public hearings, public comment is allowed provided the person is signed up on Topeka Speaks or has notified staff prior to 5 p.m. today. Comments are also limited to 4 minutes. Finally, at the end of the regular business, the commission will entertain general comment regarding matters relating to Planning Commission business, provided the persons have signed up on Topeka Speaks or has notified staff prior to 5 p.m. today. Comments are limited to 4 minutes. Amanda, would you please take the roll?
Mr. Dean.
Here.
Ms. Nelson.
Here.
Ms. Herron.
Here.
Mr. Brooks.
Here.
Mr. Kaut.
Here.
Mr. Nager.
Here.
Ms. Pearson.
Here.
Mr. Tababin.
Here.
Ms. Hannon.
Here.
We have enough for a quorum.
Thank you. Next up, approval of minutes from November 20, 2023. Is there a motion to approve?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Culp?
I would move approval of the minutes as submitted by staff.
Thank you.
I second it.
Thank you. Amanda, would you please take the roll?
Mr. Tababin.
Aye.
Ms. Hannon.
Aye.
Ms. Pearson.
Aye.
Mr. Nager.
Aye.
Mr. Kaut.
Aye.
Mr. Brooks.
Aye.
Ms. Herron.
Aye.
Ms. Nelson.
Aye.
Mr. Dean.
Aye.
Minutes pass.
Thank you. Next is declaration of conflict of interest or ex parte communications by members of the commission or staff. Do we have any tonight? If not, we will jump into action items. First up is public hearing for Z23-11 Helen and Meier Trust.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. This is case Z2311, Helen and Meier Trust LLC. Ron Meier is requesting to amend the zoning classification from R1 single-family dwelling district to I1 light industrial. The property is generally located on the west side of Northwest Vale Road, approximately 1,800 feet south of the 24 highway frontage road. Contains 11.3 acres. The existing use on the property is a firm utility building. Current zoning is single-family residential. The applicant has proposed to rezone the parcel to be compatible with the zoning on the frontage road and to allow for it to be combined with properties surrounding it, to allow for a future but speculative light industrial development. That is why they're requesting to rezone the parcel to I1 light industrial. As defined in the code, the I1 light industrial district is intended to provide for a wide range of uses which are not intended to be obnoxious or offensive by reason of odor, dust, smoke, gas, or noise. Some of the common uses allowed in the I1 district that could go onto the property if it's combined is enclosed warehousing, distribution, light manufacturing, fabrication, assembly, and treatment of their packaging. The parcel as it stands, as a standalone parcel, does not meet the minimum frontage requirements of for it to be a buildable lot in the I1 district. In fact, the frontage is less than 20 feet wide, so it doesn't have the width to accommodate a commercial driveway. It has to be combined with surrounding properties to become a developable tract. The applicant held a neighborhood meeting on December 7th. No one attended the meeting. Staff has reviewed the case according to the golden factors, Donald versus the City of Overland Park. Some of the overriding factors in this instance are character of the neighborhood. The overall existing land use pattern and character of the neighborhood is industrial. It is subsequently developed for industrial along the frontage road, west of Northwest Furman Road, south of Lower Silver Lake Road. The length of time the property has been zoned for residential. It was annexed back in 1969. By virtue of being annexed, it was zoned for single-family uses. However, later on, with the adoption of the Land Use and Growth Management Plan in 2020, for the original Land Use and Growth Management Plan, the area was designated industrial, and then the future land use map for the 2040 plan further designated this area for industrial land uses. So the character of the neighborhood is industrial. The pattern of future land use is industrial. The Land Use and Growth Management Plan defines the category as being for both light and heavy industrial uses, specifically those where you have transportation access and road and highway access, and where infrastructure can be readily extended. Staff is recommending approval of the I-1 Light Industrial District for the property.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff by commissioners? Mr. Culp?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Annie, the access off of Vale Road, Vale Avenue, is that a road? Is there a driveway there right now?
There is not a driveway currently, no. It looks to be like the only access it has currently is from the property to the south, which is zoned R1. So that is the only access that they have currently. And that, of course, will not be allowed to remain because you're not permitted to take access to a more intensive zoning district from a more restrictive zoning district. So basically, you can't have cross access from R1 into I1.
Okay, thanks. So that strip then just becomes a remnant. It's just
That strip of land, I don't know how that parcel was, I don't know the history behind how that parcel was created, but it is a strip of land that will be zoned I1. So they're not going to have enough width there for it to accommodate a driveway. So yes, it will be zoned. They are going to have to come in and replat this property. So they'll have to plat it and combine it with whichever parcels they intend to develop at the time. I don't know the history behind how the parcel was created with a less than 20-foot wide strip of land that has frontage on the street.
okay. Thank you, Annie.
Any other questions for staff? If not, is an applicant here?
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Kevin Holland, Cook Flats Trouble Engineers, and I can help with that. As with a lot of your farmlands in Kansas over the years, as they get divided amongst children, remnants get held there. It doesn't necessarily, from our design side, I wasn't really happy to have that piece just because it makes it a little awkward on that. When we originally looked at it, we hoped it was 20 foot so we could at least get fire truck access back there, but not the case. Not saying it won't ever get expanded on properties on Vale, but that would be a future time. And all this project is, we have a contractor has a contract on the property, and as they were laying it out and are putting out sales brochures and gauging interest, the layout required them to push a little bit further south, which is good news for Topeka, and bringing a couple of different users from light industrial into this area. Nothing is signed or imminent at this point, but it's purely speculative, as Annie said.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant's representative? No? Thank you. Now we will take public testimony. Each person's allowed 4 minutes to speak on this issue. Is there anybody in the public that would like to speak on this? Come on forward. Just state your name and address.
Bridget Meier, 735 Northwest Vale Avenue. And, sorry, my brother-in-law and my husband couldn't make it because they're coaching basketball, and my father-in-law is sick, so I'm speaking on their behalf. The reason we didn't go to the other meeting, they said that no one attended, but it's a Zoom meeting, and my father-in-law is not into computers, so, and then we were out of town that day, but anyway, I'm here to, I guess we don't want this rezoned and object to it because we live right there. And yes, there is industrial around there, but when you bring more industry, you bring more crime. I know that several of those businesses along frontage have been broken into, and it's my backyard. So bringing people back in that way to possibly get broken into is just bringing criminals to my backyard, and I would not like that. My father-in-law was telling me the way the land lays, it is a low-lying ground. So if they were to do any building back there, they would have to bring in a lot of dirt to fill in, because it is low-lying, and the water would flow. The water flows from the west. So we farm all that ground. I don't know if you can see. I'm pointing to the map, but my father-in-law farms most of this land back here. I know one of the other Meyers used to farm that frontage piece. But we had been farming it for decades before that, before he decided he would like to try his hand at farming. I guess that's all I have is I don't want it rezoned, and I'm speaking for my father-in-law and brother-in-law that live at 801 Northwest Vale and 901 Northwest Vale, Robert Meier and Steve and Teresa Meier. So yeah, I'm just afraid of what they would do there as far as like moving the dirt, making a mess of the water. It's already, everything is low lying there, and we've had a lot of trouble with drainage along Vale, and they've kind of fixed that for the time being. It kind of flows better now. But I'm just afraid of what they're going to do as far as like if they did need to build there, to build it up, and then the water would drain towards our fields and possibly flood out our income because it's our crops. So anyway, do you have any questions for me?
Yeah. I think I missed it. Your property, are you directly east of the subject property, or are you south of there?
We are south and east. South and east of
Okay.
the property.
The next property over to the south?
Can you see the map?
Yeah, can we-
It's the house that is, it's the rectangular house that has a kind of a, we're just down here. This is my land here, and this is where our house.
Okay.
Did you say that you do farm the land off the frontage road, or is it
Yes.
somebody else?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so
My
that's the
husband does.
land to the north, is that right?
Okay, so the land on frontage road that was just recently zoned I-1, they used to farm that, and now Greg Meier, I believe, farms it now, and that's within the last 2 years is when he wanted to start farming, so. And the land has been in the family for many generations, and it's just kind of been like when great uncles passed away, and just kind of land has shifted and that kind of thing. But my father-in-law owns much of this land, and we farm it. And the land that we own is what I showed, so.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Thank you. Is there anybody else in the public that would like to speak on this agenda item? If not, we'll close the public hearing and go to discussion by commissioners.
So how are they getting access to the property then? If it's not big enough for industrial access?
You're going to combine the lots, properties to the north that front on Highway 24.
So from the north, it sounds like they've already purchased this land, and so they would come from the north, from the highway. Not from that strip.
Mr. Chairman, I would note, I think Annie, I think she mentioned it in her report, but I'll repeat it anyway, that the future land use map, that this zoning is, if it's approved, it would be consistent with the future land use map. And the conferee may or may not be aware that the entirety of the properties west of Vale, going for, looks like for a whole mile, is all shown as light industrial on the future land use map.
Including the residential houses. Any other questions, comments?
I have a question, I think, for staff. Since this is purely speculative at this point, if they were to want to develop some building there that would require filling in low-lying areas, would that require some review by city staff for water runoff and things of that nature before that they could do that?
Yeah, I can answer that, Commissioner. At the time they submit for a site plan review approval, they're required to submit stormwater management plans, and they'll need to address any quantity issues to prevent runoff from going off the site. There's a minimal amount that's allowed off site, and Mr. Holland can probably speak more technically about that. But the size of this development will probably require treatment as well, so things like rain gardens and things like that. So stormwater will be addressed as part of that process.
All right, thank you.
I also have a question. And if I recall correctly, as part of that site review, people can make comment about the look of the property, meaning if it's in somebody's backyard, they can make request for some sort of visual enhancements.
There are standards that will have to be addressed as far as the aesthetics of the building they develop, but as far as once it gets to the site plan review phase, that is all administrative. So I'm not sure folks will have really any arena to speak against it or in opposition, as long as they meet the standards, landscaping, the building design standards.
I have one more, I have a question. So it was said, and I'm not sure who said it, but it was said that this is going to be industrial anyway. So does that mean the farmland is in the purchase process? Because if the farmland is hers and it's surrounding what's there, can't really be both.
So Mr. Holland can probably address the status of the land. It's probably under contract at this time, I'm not sure. The land that's being rezoned. And the land to the north is I don't believe that's been purchased by the developer, but that was rezoned at the, with the, it was authorized by the owner at the time, which is the Meiers to the north. The land that's south is not part of this at this time, so we don't know what the future holds for that. It is anticipated that it's going to be developed as industrial. It's zoned for zoned for single-family residential development. There's not a lot of that happening out there, so it's probably unlikely that it'll be developed that way, even though it's zoned that way. So the direction that we're seeing, that staff is seeing in this area is things are developing as light industrial. It's kind of, city has approved a few rezonings to light industrial that front on the US 24 frontage road to the north and to the west of this site. It just seems to be moving in that direction.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, discussion? If not, we'd be also looking for a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Culp?
I would offer a motion that the Planning Commission adopt the findings and analysis of the planning staff report and recommend to the governing body approval of the rezoning from R1 to I1.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, would you please take the roll?
Mr. Dean?
Aye.
Ms. Nelson?
Aye.
Ms. Herron?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Mr. Kaut?
Aye.
Mr. Nager?
Aye.
Ms. Pearson?
Aye.
Ms. Hannon?
Aye.
Mr. Tabavin?
Aye.
Motion passes 9-0.
Mr. Chairman, before you go to the next,
Yes.
could I, a couple of months ago, we had another instance where there was a rezoning to light industrial for property that abutted residential zone property. And I made the point at that time that I thought the setback requirements that we have, which are 10 feet to the rear and 7 foot side yards, was really very, very, quite small. And it's not an issue here. I didn't want to bring it up, while we were considering this matter, but it's another instance where I think, I'd like to have the staff's thoughts at some point about, whether or not a text amendment would be appropriate for the consideration of the Planning Commission. It's just, if there were a house there,
I think it was actually the property right next door to the,
yeah.
right here.
Yeah, and with the height and mass that we allow in the I-1, I mean, you could have right looking out in your backyard, your back window, you could see a very imposing structure under the current regs. So, anyway, thank you.
Next action item is public hearing for PUD 23-8 by Pizza Hut by Flynn Group. We're going to go to commercial break. Change up planners. All right? Mr. Sharp.
Thank you, everybody, for your patience. So this is a proposal for PUD 23/08 by Flynn Group. This is a request for rezoning from O&I 2, Office and Institutional, to Planned Unit Development, PUD, to allow for O&I 2 uses and a restaurant with drive-through services. The proposal for the PUD is to maintain its current O&I 2 zoning use while allowing the commercial use of a restaurant with drive-through, and in this case, a quick service restaurant with drive-through. And the slides keep advancing on me. So yes, staff recommends approval subject to the conditions listed in the staff report. The proposed zoning provides for a range of uses. It will support the reuse of the building. It helps maintain the character of the Old Town neighborhood, and it will also restrict the west side of Topeka Boulevard from becoming an overly intense commercial strip. This is also what we like to call adaptive reuse of an existing building. This is taken from the American Planning Association website, but if you do not know, adaptive reuse is the process of converting buildings that have outlived their original purpose to accommodate new uses. New uses for the building will occur, but it will retain its architectural features. Adaptive reuse like this will help retain that built space of the neighborhood, the Old Town neighborhood on the west side of Topeka Boulevard. It will not drastically alter it by demolishing the property that's over 50 years old and putting a new building there. So just a little bit more about the location and case history of this site. The property is located on the southwest corner of Topeka Boulevard and 9th Street. Parcel is approximately 0.26 acre in size. The existing structure was built in 1964. We know a little bit about the architectural information of the building due to that it was surveyed in our mid-century modern survey that took place in 2019 through 2020. So with that, what the mid-century modern survey says about the building, it's a one-story steel frame building that features a flat roof with wide overhanging eaves. However, the building has lost its overall historic integrity due to modern window and door replacements and modern stuccoed panels. However, it was a good example of the modern movement style. That's why it was in the mid-century modern survey. So let's get into, and also the building has been used as a financial institution for most of its history as well. So a little bit about the zoning. The property has been in an office zoning classification since its existence. It started from the E designation, later converting to the O&I 2 designation. Properties on the eastern side of Topeka Boulevard are zoned D1 downtown. To the west, you have the Senate Luxury Suites, zoned M3 Multiple Family Dwelling District. It also has a historic district overlay. You do not see it on that zoning map, but the next map you'll see that. To the north, you have more O&I 2 office and institutional zoning. To the north, that's a general office building, and directly to the south, it's O&I 2, and that is a parking lot. A little bit about the future land use of the area. This future land use combines the 2003 Old Town Neighborhood Plan and the Downtown Master Plan. The neighborhood plan identifies the future land use as downtown. This designation recognizes the mixed-use nature and higher intensity of the area between Tyler Street and Topeka Boulevard. Next, you have the Downtown Master Plan, which was adopted in 2021. And the Downtown Master Plan considers areas east of Topeka Boulevard to be the downtown core, where the D zoning is most appropriate. So the zoning that we are proposing provides for a range of uses. It supports the reuse of the building, and it supports the desired character of this part of the neighborhood. We're not looking to rezone it to a straight classification to a C2, C3, C4, or a D1. The purpose of the rezoning of this planned unit development is to retain O&I 2 uses and to limit the commercial uses just to this quick service restaurant with drive-through. A little bit of the exhibits here and statement of operations. This went through our general review from other departments when this was initially started as a zoning case. What you see on the site plan here, or this is actually the landscape plan, but how this traffic will enter from 9th Street into the alley and will exit onto Topeka Boulevard. City traffic engineering recommends no left turns for drivers exiting the driveway onto Topeka Boulevard. Again, here's another exhibit of the elevations that they're proposing. Again, no major architectural changes. It'll retain its character. So yes, no substantial exterior changes. The drive-through is pickup only. No indoor dining. It'll be pickup, carry out, and delivery only. Staff is recommending approval subject to conditions in the staff report on page 8 of the staff report, but some of those conditions will be O&I 2 standards will apply. The quick service restaurant with drive-through will need to reuse the existing building. A traffic study is required. Approval is going to be required before site development. Conditions regarding requirements for there will be conditions regarding requirements for parking. This drive-through, it's not a typical. It's a quick service restaurant drive-through. It's not like a typical menu board. You're not going up to a menu board and ordering something and then waiting for your pizza to be made. It's for pickup and carry out only. With that, yes, staff is recommending approval subject to conditions. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. Any questions for staff? Mr. Meier?
I, whenever reading the report, got a little confused about the left turn. So my understanding is the applicant does not think it's necessary to restrict to only right turn. City staff thinks it's best practice to limit to only right turn. If we were to pass without any amendments, you could turn either way. Is that correct?
So Commissioner, first of all, when we advised the applicant about how to apply for the zoning, we didn't say they had to submit a traffic study up front, but they did, which is helpful, I think. So the applicant wishes to be able to have left turning movements on Topeka Boulevard for exiting traffic. The traffic engineers reviewed this, and the traffic engineer was part of the pre-application discussion, and they were advised up front that it was very unlikely that the city would approve left turning movements for exiting traffic. And so at this point, the city engineer's recommendation and really a requirement would be that there will be no left turning movements on Topeka Boulevard.
And that's how the staff report stands, with 0 amendments on our part.
Correct. Let me add something that's kind of a nuance here. There's not a condition on this in the staff report or in the recommendations that says that. Basically, it defers to the traffic study. So let's say that for whatever reason, the applicant can convince the city engineer that they should be allowed to have left turns. I suppose that could still happen. It's basically taken out of the conditions specifically because it is a fairly technical matter. Those decisions are typically made as part of site plan review, and not part of a zoning approval typically. So that's the way it stands today.
Right. And then also related to that, how close is that to 9th Street? Is that like less than 100 feet?
Yeah.
On the north side?
Sorry, where the exit would be, where a car would be exiting this Pizza Hut as opposed to a car traveling east on 9th Street. Those would probably be within 100 feet of each other.
I'm not sure off the top of my head
All right.
the distance.
That's okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could follow up on that, either William or Mike, I had the same issue about the proximity to 9th Street. The city code does have an absolute minimum distance between a curb cut and the street there. I mean, there's two issues here to me with the left-hand turn. I'm sure we'll hear from the applicant about it, but turning left across 2 lanes of traffic on Topeka Boulevard is a dangerous thing. And I'm, like I think many of us, very familiar with this intersection. And my observation is that traffic going east on Southwest 9th Street, coming onto Topeka Boulevard, if they're making a right-hand turn, doesn't matter if there's a red light or not. People just pull through that intersection with regularity. So if somebody is making a left-hand turn out of the Pizza Hut, and there's not much distance there to avoid an accident for somebody rolling through the intersection.
So Commissioner Kalb, if this was a new site, it had not been developed, I'm not sure that the city would allow them to have an access on Topeka Boulevard because Topeka Boulevard is an arterial and there is a spacing minimum and it's not in the zoning code, it's in the what we call
But Mike, the fact that we've allowed this to a left-hand turn off when it was a financial institution doesn't mean we have to approve it, the continuation of that left-hand turn. This is an opportunity to correct that if we think it's a traffic hazard.
You're right, correct, yes. And yes.
But is it non-conforming right now?
I would say it's non-conforming in terms of spacing. And by the way, our city engineering staff is here and they can answer specific questions about this.
Okay.
And they're probably better able to answer this than me.
Thank you. Sure. I've got one other question. William, I appreciate you listing the historic properties in here, and I was trying to see if there was some angle, something that we should be taking into consideration. Mary, back in the old days, historic properties, it was not just the footprint of the historic properties, but it was the environs of the property. And I guess the city's done away with that.
Well, the state's done away with the environs review.
I'm sorry?
The state has done away with the
Right.
environs review, so that's really, it's
Okay, but
irrelevant.
the Topeka Landmarks Commission similarly does not look at the environs of the area, right? It's just the historic property itself, so.
Correct. Commissioner Pearson, correct, right, yes.
So it's good to know and be reminded there are historic properties in close proximity there, but because this is not a demolition, it's not new construction, and it's not part of a historic district itself, it's a non-issue.
That's correct.
Okay.
And just to point out, as Will pointed out, I believe this building has actually lost its integrity, if that's correct.
Yes,
Isn't that what you
according to
said?
the Kansas Historic Resources Inventory.
Which property?
It's lost its integrity, which means it's been surveyed and looked at as a historic property, and it meets some of the criteria, but not all of it. So it's a lovely building, and I'm happy they are not changing the facade of it and keeping that. But yeah, unfortunately, there's not much more you can say about it that way.
Okay. Thank you all.
But I did have a question about the lighting that's in the
Yes.
memo. It said that you guys were going to take a look at the issue of the lighting. Is that reflected in this site plan?
No, I do not believe it's reflected in the site plan. That issue came up in the neighborhood information meeting about security and security lighting. And from what we say in the staff report, yeah, the exterior lighting will be reviewed at site plan review. The illumination level of light may exceed 3-foot candles at the lot line as needed for security. So that was just responding to a concern from the neighborhood information meeting.
But it's on the agenda to look at, right?
I'm sorry?
They're going to look at it closer.
Yes, we would look and address that at site plan review.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Now we'll move into applicant presentation. Is there any representative of the applicant here to talk about it?
Hi there.
Hello.
I'm Molly Redmond with CEC, and I have Cody Cohen with me from Flynn. We really just appreciate the help that Will and Mike have given us on this project, and we really just are ready to answer any questions that you guys have for us.
Any questions for the applicant? Mr. Meier?
Are you guys particularly familiar with the nature of the business that as it is now, just south of here? Like, I guess what I'm curious about is how much, what percentage roughly do you think is going to be people actually driving through, and what percentage roughly do you think is going to be people calling and then your staff delivering to their residence? And you may not have an idea, and that's okay too, but.
Sorry, Cody Cowan with the Flynn Restaurant Group. I'm the construction manager if we get a chance to do the project. Those exact numbers I don't have from our operational staff currently, but as far as the volume of delivery traffic or walk-in traffic or pickup traffic, Molly, you want me to compare it to the numbers from the summary? We had an independent third-party traffic summary conducted in which that engineer had some recommendations, and he made reference to the quantity of traffic from its existing condition to our proposed condition. And I could read, if you don't mind, a couple paragraphs. The proposed Pizza Hut is anticipated to generate fewer peak hour trips than the former bank use, Therefore, the traffic impact to the surrounding roadway network is expected to be no different than the former land use. Based on the results of the capacity analysis performed, the proposed development is anticipated to have no significant impact on the operations of the study intersections. The existing proposed site driveway to Southwest Topeka Boulevard currently has adequate site distance and should maintain site triangles that are free of site obstructions such as parked vehicles, buildings, walls, hedges, bushes, low-growing trees, etc., to maintain a clear line of sight to potential conflicting vehicles. Any new vegetation within the sight line of the driveway should be maintained at a height of 2 feet or less to provide unobstructed views, and this is the last couple sentences. The existing site driveway to Southwest Topeka Boulevard currently has no turn restrictions, and it hasn't since 1964. Based on the results of trip generation, capacity, site distance, evaluation, the driveway is expected to operate similar as its current use. Therefore, the egress driveway to Southwest Topeka Boulevard should remain operational with both left and right-hand out egress movements. That was the summary from our third-party independent traffic study. But back to frequency, its existing use as far as peak traffic is from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Of course, people ordering pizza, it's going to be at a later time. But as far as our customers, our peak traffic time is going to be at a later time in the day, from 7 p.m. To 8 p.m. So what you would see as far as volume of cars and pedestrians, what we are proposing is going to be less than what is out there currently.
Any other question?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question about the access off of Topeka Avenue.
Yes, sir.
Hey, I don't know if you want to answer this or not, but if the bottom line was that it's going to be right turn only south onto Topeka Boulevard, does that kill your deal?
It is a significant, my mind's gone blank. We would really prefer it to be left or right to reflect the current use. Would it kill our deal? No, but it would significantly impact the store's capability to service our customers.
Have you considered that if there's both a right and left turn, as the existing driveway has, that you're going to get people coming in, turning into the exit?
We hope not. But yeah, I don't know why they would. We could put up signs to keep that as an
Well, you indicate that there's a sign there, but that's the only notice that that's an exit only.
I would agree, Molly and Liz.
I don't think there's any, we talked about adding medians in the road, and that wasn't part of our project. The road would stay as it is, to not add any barriers or anything.
Okay.
But we do have plenty of signage and road markings proposed.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
And I don't know if you'll be able to answer this about the trip generation, but I mean, just 7 vehicles during and I know we're talking about 2 different peaks. We're talking about a peak traffic condition versus your peak time of operation. But it just struck me that 7 vehicles during an hour seems like a low amount of traffic for your business. But I'm hoping you have a lot more business than that. But is that something that they can maybe take another look at, or maybe the traffic study is going to look at that? Because I know with the ITE trip generation manual, you have a variety within a given category, so some judgment has to be used even though they're looking at a quick service restaurant. I don't know, that number just struck me as being on the low side. But I mean, even if you were to triple it, you're going to be about what it says the trip generation for the bank would have been. So So I'm not sure that we have a capacity problem. It's more of a problem with exiting vehicles conflicting with other vehicles on Topeka Boulevard, pedestrians in the crosswalk. I actually went out there and watched it during the traffic peak this evening, and very few gaps in Topeka Boulevard traffic that would allow a left turn. I mean, you would, an exiting driver's probably going to be waiting a minute or two, and that may impact the flow of vehicles through the business as well. So, but I'm assuming the traffic study is going to address some of those issues.
Correct, yeah, we have a full traffic report, done by another company, so, I think it helps alleviate some of the concerns, but also, something that we've talked about is someone's not gonna wait to turn left. If they can't turn left, then they'll turn right.
Yeah.
I think that's what it really comes down to.
Any other questions for the applicant?
I think I have one. Yes. Deliveries and trash pickup, have you confirmed that those are possible within the site?
Yeah, so we drove the truck virtually through the site. We will need to widen the alley entrance apron. I think it's shown on our site plan that it'll be widened a little bit to get the delivery truck in there, but we use a pretty large truck, so I assume that the trash pickup truck would also be able to get in there.
Any other questions? Thank you.
And as far as the site lighting, once again, whatever is needed, would be willing to do.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we'll move into public testimony. Members of the public are allowed 4 minutes per person. Is there anybody who wants to speak on this agenda item?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Shamika King Sims. I'm the president of Historic Old Town Neighborhood Improvement Association. Just wanted to kind of make some comments. Generally speaking, I don't think the neighborhood has any sort of major issue with this proposal. One of the big items that came up that I wanted to make sure that the engineers had awareness of is the pedestrian portion of this whole schematic. You have a lot of high school students that go down through Topeka Boulevard to do lunch. You have a huge flow of pedestrian and bike traffic just from the folks who live in and around that portion of the neighborhood. And so with regard to turning left, particularly with regard to the beacon being catty corner to where this is located and this pedestrian sidewalk, I really think that needs deeper consideration with regard to safety. We talked a little bit about the lighting with regard to those who will be working at this site, especially during evening hours like now when it's getting dark a lot sooner. And so making sure that we have proper lighting so that everyone feels safe is kind of, the goal. To make sure that people feel comfortable utilizing the services on Topeka Boulevard. I have made contact with the Beacon owners who utilize the parking lot that is, what direction? South of where this building is located, to see if maybe there was an opportunity to share parking for those who are working in the building so they're not traveling quite as far during those evening hours. There is interest in having that conversation, so I will relay that to the Flynn Group's engineers to make sure that they have that conversation going forward. The biggest thing is that, again, kind of going to what Will was talking about, we are a neighborhood first, and so making sure that we maintain some, balance between those who are living in the area, those who have businesses in the area, and all things in between is really the goal. So I could stand for any questions if anyone has any, but if not, I think I'll end my comment there.
Thank you. Any questions for the commenter? Nope. All right, thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to speak on this agenda item from the public? If not, we will close the public comment period and move on to discussion by commissioners. Any discussion on the matter?
Mr. Chairman, I don't want to beat this to death, but I really am concerned about the possibility of a left turn off of that existing driveway. Mike we put all of the marbles with the site plan review process as to whether or not it's going to be right only or right and left.
The way the staff report's written, the recommendations, it lies with the city engineer as part of the site development plan, but they have stated in their response to the traffic study, it's attached to this report, that they are opposed to left turns, exiting left turns on Topeka Boulevard. Again, engineering staff's here if you want to ask them any questions. We asked them to attend tonight.
Okay, the conditions as written would, ultimately, they could be both the right and left. That could be
I think it's very, very unlikely that it would allow for exiting left turning traffic. I suppose the Planning Commission could be more specific in their recommendations.
But still, anything we do is just advisory. The city council can remove that if we were to put language in as a condition.
Yes.
And they saw it differently, then.
Yes.
But Mr. Chairman, for myself, I would feel better if there was some language added to the condition that references a traffic study or the site plan review process relating to that driveway. Words to the effect that the Planning Commission is concerned about creating a dangerous situation if there's no diverter or a reconfiguration of that curb cut.
So Commissioner, you could include in your recommendations the addition of a condition that prohibits left turning, exiting traffic onto Topeka Boulevard. In my opinion, you could do that.
Okay.
You can also just go on the record, as you are now, and say you're concerned about it. But I think if you wanted to be more explicit in your recommendation about that, you can do that.
Well, Mr. Chairman, it would just be a matter of the sentiment of the Planning Commission. We can't dictate that. It's still going to go through site plan review process, but an expression of concern, if it's shared by, I may be on my own out here, okay? But I would like to see language along the lines of what Mike had stated.
Oh, good.
I guess I am curious what your concern is. Have you seen an overabundance of accidents in that area? Or, I mean, because it's been that way since the building was put there, so.
Right, but I think the traffic flow coming out of the building has been vacant for a number of years, so we haven't seen traffic going through there in recent times. But I would hazard a guess that the traffic flow off of a financial institution like that is going to be different than a restaurant, which
I guess I would agree with you if their primary hours of operation tended to be during the normal workday, but I feel like their peak hours will be after 5 or 6 p.m. And I personally avoid Topeka Boulevard at that time period till about 7. So bless their hearts for even thinking that, being able to pull out that way is a good idea. But
Well,
I think it's
Commissioner
off-
Mitchell, I
off
think this,
traffic.
I'm sorry, I think this is going to be a very popular business enterprise, and you have a high school very close by, and you've got a lot of office workers, state office workers right nearby, and the existing Pizza Hut is going away, so.
Good points.
Anyway.
Good points. Yeah. Ambivalent.
Mr. Chair, I think, again, I've expressed myself and my concerns, and I guess that's part of the minutes, so
I wonder if, if you, what you do is put a sign up and someone could still go left anyway, if they really wanted to, after hours. I don't know. I guess would the only difference be there's a sign that says no left turn?
Well, I think there's language in here talking about a diverter, and I don't know if that means, William, if that means the same kind of creature that's out on Wanamaker?
I will just say that I forgot to mention that Topeka Metro did provide comments too, and they're recommending a diverter on the exit to 4 southbound flow as well. So that's what Topeka Metro was saying.
What is that exactly?
A diverter meaning that it will prevent the driver from turning left onto Topeka Boulevard. It'll make it so drivers can only turn right southbound.
Like a curb that forces traffic
Kind of
to
like
the right?
in front of Best Buy in Wanamaker.
Yeah, yes, you see them on Wanamaker, yes.
Knives come out and slash tires, right?
It's not that aggressive.
It's the way we used to do it.
Any other comments, thoughts about the agenda item or traffic flow?
Commissioner Kopp has good points about the change in traffic patterns. I will agree with that.
Yeah. And the engineering staff is addressing that in their reports, correct? And that'll all be considered during site development.
So it sounds like
the plan.
likely if we
So,
go with what we have,
I think,
it's going to be right turn only.
yeah.
And Mr. Chairman, I think, as Mike mentioned, that this is, we think it's a non-conforming. The left turn aspect of that access point is non-conforming, maybe non-conforming. If it is, and with the vacant non-use of the property, I think the legal status of the non-conforming use may have lapsed, may have been discontinued. So it may be something the city attorney's office would take care of.
Let me respond to that if I could, Commissioner. So any access control is not in our zoning code. It's in our policy, which we refer to as our design criteria.
Okay.
So the rules that normally apply to nonconformities, I don't know how that works with policy that's a transportation policy. Our policy is not that specific, I don't believe, on left turning movements and turning traffic. It's more about the access management generally, how close that driveway is to the intersection. Being an arterial, the standard is probably 250 feet or more, might even be more than that, and it might then be limited to right turns only. I don't really know. Again, our traffic engineer is here, our city engineer is here. The person who specifically reviewed the traffic study, I'm not sure that person's here, but they can answer those questions better than any of us here can, if you want to ask them to come to the podium.
Would you please come to the podium, Mr. Traffic Engineers?
I'm Lee Holmes, the city project engineer, and kind of filling in as a traffic engineer for them since they don't have one. And then Brad is from Benish, who we've hired to be our traffic engineer experts. What is the specific question again?
Well, I guess the specific question is whether or not there could be a continuation of the left turn off of that driveway, whether that would be non-compliant with any city codes.
Based on our design criteria, we would have to have 250 feet from an intersection for a driveway. Obviously, this is only 60 feet from the.
And that curb has been, that curb cut's been there since 64, probably?
Way back then, yes, probably. I don't know why they allowed it, but they did.
Okay.
Under current conditions, we would not have allowed it, but we're not out looking to remove all non-conforming.
You would not allow it for traffic safety purposes?
Right, because it's just too close to another intersection. And we also have our RFP there at this intersection, which are rapid rectangular flashing beacons that the pedestrian pushes a button and it flashes. Because at one point, we did have a tremendous amount of pedestrians crossing there. But of course, the docking building is being torn down, and there's gonna be another one built. So that's gonna generate some additional pedestrians once that is fully operational again. So we're anticipating that as well.
I think, sorry, Lee.
Go ahead.
I think, one of the things to keep in mind here is there's a limited property frontage that they have. We have to work with people and landowners sometimes to maintain access. Would we want this driveway here if there wasn't a building here? No, we wouldn't, because I think as Lee indicated, the access management criteria as part of the design criteria says 500 feet for a principal arterial, which is what Topeka Boulevard is, unless it's restricted to right in, right out, and then it can be 300. We don't meet any of those. And so I think all of the points that several folks have mentioned here, including the lady from the audience, are exactly why we're concerned about allowing lefts out there. The queuing on Topeka Boulevard will create some gaps. We've all been there. We've all shot the gap, right, to get out. And you have a crosswalk that's an RFB protected crosswalk, so to speak, when somebody pushes the button merely 40 feet from this driveway. And if they shoot the gap at the wrong time, we're trying to look out for the safety of the motoring public, of the Pizza Hut patrons, as well as the pedestrian activity in the area. And I think that's why we came up to the conclusion that we did.
And to explain what a diverter is, it's really kind of a pork chop. It just angles the driver to where they can only make a right turn. If they want to make a left turn, they can certainly drive over curbs and things to do it, but that's an attempt to restrict it. Signs really don't do it. People don't read signs anyway, we all know that. So, but it's an attempt to keep people from doing something they shouldn't be doing.
But I think this action helps Public Works protect the safety. If we need to take further measures, if there does become an accident problem, we can take the next step with some of those hard treatments. I think this was a way for us to document our concerns. And of course, the Planning Commission, whatever it wishes here relative to this, we just wanted to make sure that the traffic safety concerns came through our recommendation.
Does that help?
Thank you.
Anything else?
Any other questions for engineering? Thanks, Lee. Any other discussion, or we're open for a motion?
I'd make a motion.
Okay.
Based on the findings and analysis in the staff report, I move to recommend to the governing body approval of the rezoning from O&I 2 Office and Institutional District to PUD Planned Unit Development District with O&I 2 Office and Institutional District and a restaurant with drive-through service on property located at 901 Southwest Topeka Boulevard, subject to the conditions as recommended in the staff report.
Any discussions on the motion?
Is there a second?
Oh, yep, second, sorry. Second, any discussions? Do we want to add any other language to that? to,
Sure, I think the record is going to show
that we're
some
concerned about it.
concerns,
Right?
and the input from the traffic engineer, the city engineer's office is very good, and they're involved in the final decisions on the configuration of the driveway. So
Okay.
I'm confident that the professionals will
Do the right thing. Any other discussions on the motion? If not, would you please take the roll?
Mr. Dean,
Aye.
Ms. Nelson,
Aye.
Ms. Herron. Aye. Mr. Brooks,
Aye.
Mr. Kaup,
Aye.
Mr. Nager,
Aye.
Ms. Pearson,
Aye.
Ms. Hannon,
Aye.
Mr. Tebobbin.
Aye.
Motion passes 9-0.
Thank you. Next up is public hearing for historic Holiday Park. We have another commercial break. Should have a halftime show while that changes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Evening, Commissioners. This is a comprehensive planning amendment 23-01, the Historic Holiday Park Neighborhood Plan Update. This is a follow-up from our kickoff or introduction meeting we had in September where we introduced what was going to happen with that plan. So what is Dreams 1? Dreams 1 is, it's what replaced SORT, but this is the city's program where we provide $1.7 million to a neighborhood and then 1.7 million in infrastructure funds, 330,000 in housing rehabilitation dollars. Dreams 1 is selected by the Citizens Advisory Council to one neighborhood every other year. For Dreams 1, in that first year, we have a neighborhood plan, either create a new one or an update. In this instance, we are updating the neighborhood plan. It was, the initial plan was actually back in 1998, I believe, which was Historic Holiday Park and Central Park. We had a 2008 update to that plan, and we're updating this plan again. And then 2024, we will do project design, and then 2025 implementation. The process on this, so we held our kickoff meeting in early March with the neighborhood. All property owners and residents of that neighborhood were invited to that meeting. And then spring to fall, we had about 10 meetings with the neighborhood to cover a variety of topics related to updating the plan. We held our final neighborhood meeting November 29th. This is after we do project selection and everything else. So this is a presentation for the neighborhood plan to show them where we're at and then ask the neighborhood to approve what they have seen. Then here we are today, and hopefully January will be going to the governing body. The planning area for Historic Holiday Park, you have 10th Avenue to the north, Topeka Boulevard to the east, 13th Street to the south, and then Southwest Clay Street to the west. Some of the key issues in this neighborhood. So on this map, the green area you see, that is the historic district. There's also some small brown areas. Those are also historic parcels. So within this neighborhood, about 1/3 of the residential is within a historic district. From the 2008 plan to what we found in the research for this plan, home values were relatively stagnant. There was only an increase of $6,600 on the average single-family property value. Some other key issues as we work through implementation of projects and how we'll spend that $1.7 million was, do we maintain the historic infrastructure within the neighborhood? That is something the neighborhood was interested in. Or do we go with a new modern approach and replace some of that with asphalt and concrete sidewalks, things of that nature? And then another one we also worked through in some of our final meetings was a traditional neighborhood approach with our target areas, which we touched on in that kickoff, where we typically have those 3 to 5 block areas, and then you have a primary and a secondary, and those receive the bulk of the funds. And then if you have any remaining, that spills over to your tertiary and then anything else. So those are some of the key issues, and we will touch on the last two. The home values, we're looking to address with that $330,000 in housing rehabilitation funds. Future land use, we have no proposed changes to the future land use map. Went one too far, sorry about that. So target area selection, again, just to kind of build off that previous conversation. So on August 14th, the neighborhood was shown the composite map, which you see here. That was layering the housing conditions, infrastructure, owner occupancy, and crime to create one map that shows overall conditions for the neighborhood. We had the neighborhood vote on the 4 different target areas. So the northwest was what they considered the primary. That had some of the lowest overall infrastructure conditions. The secondary target area on the south side on 13th, between Huntoon and 13th, that had relatively high infrastructure scores, but had some of the lowest housing conditions. The 3rd and 4th target areas each additionally had some infrastructure concerns as well. And we'll kind of follow a traditional housing approach with the primary and secondary. But we are not going to follow a traditional approach to the infrastructure. As you can see here, we have projects throughout all of the target areas. We worked pretty closely with the neighborhood and had several meetings regarding how the implementation would be done, or specifically implemented in this neighborhood. The thing we heard the most was, let's increase the curb appeal. We can maximize our funds with that 1.7 million if we approach this with mill and overlays, if the curb and gutter is done in a manner that would still reflect the historic limestone. So what's being replaced is a poured concrete that is more of a limestone look to it, but it is not. And then the sidewalks are all going to be, for the most part, there is brick that is going to be replaced with concrete. Now, before we do the full scale replacement of concrete sidewalks, we will give property owners an opportunity before we get to replacement. We will send out a notice that says, if you would like to keep your brick sidewalk, you need to notify us, and then we will let you know whether or not it is ADA compliant. And if not, you have until a set date to get it ADA compliant, or it will be replaced. So that is kind of what we're looking at as far as implementation. Additionally, leading up, yes.
Will they have any assistance from you to get it ADA compliant?
As far as like I believe the 50/50 sidewalk program is just tied to concrete. There was a very significant price difference, but we talked through all of the options for sidewalk replacement. It was about $12 a square foot for concrete, and it was going to be $40 a square foot for brick. And again, working with the neighborhood to maximize the funds that they have, concrete was a preferred approach. But we kind of met in the middle there. There are some neighbors we know, or some residents we know, want to keep their brick, and we're going to give them that opportunity. But as far as ability to bring that up to ADA standard, that is not something that
So no.
Correct. Correct.
Thank you.
That $12 versus $40,
Yes.
that's just for the installation, is that right? It wouldn't represent any difference in price for upkeep of brick versus concrete sidewalks?
So the brick is going to be more costly to maintain, and that is the responsibility of the property owner to maintain that brick.
So it's more costly not only to install, but to maintain as well?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Utilizing non-Dreams Fund, the city also has the sidewalk infill. The white lines you see here were sidewalk infill projects. This was $305,000 that was additional to the neighborhood that we kind of tacked on with this program. So there was some significant sidewalk replacement as well. That was also some of that was from brick to concrete, but there was some concrete to concrete as well. So we're going to have right around $2 million in infrastructure projects for this neighborhood. And the next slide shows the breakdown. As you look through this, the mill and overlay projects, you tend to be around $60,000 on average for a block. If we were going to do some sort of other treatment, one of them we talked about was returning them to a brick standard. We were going to be looking at a minimum of $225,000 to $250,000. So this approach with mill and overlays allows the neighborhood to get significantly more projects completed. So this is what we have for kind of that project list. It's just over 1.7, so that will provide, if this is over budget or depending on what we get back from consultants, there may be a few projects that have to drop off, but that's why we give them a full amount and build out to that 1.7. In addition to this, we do have some remaining unfunded projects. So these are all, again, because the mill and overlay route, we could get a lot of the more standard infrastructure projects completed. Alley projects are really what was remaining. So alley approaches and then repaving of alleys is another thing that will need to be done. We include these unfunded projects so that even though this pool of funds is dry for this year, when Dreams 2 comes up, which is $1.7 million that all of the NIAs can apply for, when Historic Holiday Park is eligible, they have a set project list that they can then go to and say, we have a general idea, get a little bit of a refresher from engineering, and then move forward with that. Some of the alley approaches along Huntoon may be addressed with that Huntoon project, which will be in the future as well, which is why we did not do anything on Huntoon Street, because there's already something in the CIP for that.
Bryson, are there any current brick streets that are getting paved over, or is it just re-milling and overlay existing asphalt?
So none of the only brick street that I'm aware of, trying to think how to phrase this, there is brick underlying a lot of these streets. And that was part of the tough conversation we had with the neighborhood, was with a mill and overlay, the likelihood that they will be damaged and that brick will not be usable moving forward is very real. Fillmore between 13th and Huntoon is actually the only exposed brick in this neighborhood currently, so that is not being touched at this time. But everything else is going to be a mill and overlay.
Okay, thank you.
So on top of the projects we have, and again, so the neighborhood has projects to move forward with. We have just over $1.1 million in those unfunded projects that are in the plan that can be there for the Dreams 2 pool in the future. Some of the plan highlights.
I'm sorry, before you get off of the projects,
Yes.
I'm a little confused here. What we're talking about, the 1.7
Yes.
million, what part of that, or is it any or all of that in the most recently adopted capital improvement plan?
The 1.7 is not. The only thing that is in I think there's a line item for, it is, the specific projects listed here are not in the CIP. There's a line item for, and I don't know exactly what it's called. So there's a budget for these projects, but they were not identified until we have adopted the plan. If that makes sense?
Well, it probably does, but I'm not following it. So I understand there's not an item in the CIP that specifically references any of these, but there are some lump sum line items for certain purposes,
Correct.
sidewalks, streets,
Correct.
curb and gutter, and so forth.
Yes.
So in the recently adopted CIP, there are funds for some of this?
Correct. There's 1.7 million for projects associated with Dreams 1, the neighborhood.
Okay.
And so now we have just outlined in more detail what those projects will be.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Sorry about that. Okay, so plan highlights, work to stabilize those intensive care block groups. Again, the neighborhood's kind of split. To the north, you have the intensive, I have that backwards. To the south is the intensive care block groups. To the north is outpatient. So again, the housing rehabilitation dollars going into the southern part of the neighborhood to help rehabilitate those homes is a big focus here as well. That's bullet point 2. Improve the curb appeal by spreading projects throughout all of the target areas. Just from the time that we had these sidewalk infill projects be completed, and then our later meetings, people were already commenting on how Sidewalks look really good. It does kind of affect the appeal just looking at the homes from the street. So that was something we did hear in the positive feedback already. And then new infrastructure prioritized over historic infrastructure, which, good or bad, we got the most. We spent the money in a way that is going to provide the most number of projects to the neighborhood. Staff recommends approval of the historic Holliday Park neighborhood plan update as a City of the Elements comprehensive plan. And then next steps, the plan is available at www.topeka.org/planning. And then there is a neighborhood and area plans or topekaspeaks.org under this item. City council review in January, and then 2024 project design, and then 2025 implementation. And that is all I have. If anybody has any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Mr. Nager?
The areas where the buildings were in the roughest shape, is there some common thread with those? Like, are those rental properties that are owned by out-of-state corporations? Are those elderly residents that can't keep up with their homes? Like, is there some takeaway to why it's those buildings in particular?
I don't know that I have an answer to that. I have not dug in enough to those specific areas to be able to tell or find a pattern for out-of-state property owners, or you can't exactly tell who lives in or maintains that property. So I do not have an exact answer to that, unfortunately.
All right, thanks.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
In realizing you didn't go over the entire plan, I am going to go over a section you did not speak on, since it's in here. Community building and initiatives, is that something that is going to be helped coordinated through the neighborhood department or the CAC? How does that work?
So is there a specific, can you point me to the page number, please?
47.
Thank you. So a lot of this is something that part of the plan is helping to empower the NIA itself. And so there are aspects with community engagement where working with them, or if there's something within this plan that we call out, I don't know if liaison's the right word, but it's helping if they have an interest in something, whether it's community engagement or needing to talk to police or whoever, it's kind of to just put ideas out there, provide some framework, and then whoever that department, division, if it's something we can address internal, we will, but putting it out there to help the NIA and support them where necessary.
Well, I guess I'm seeing it in the plan, but I'm not seeing anyone in charge of it. So maybe I'm wondering who's actually in charge of it since it's in the plan.
So there are, generally it's empowering the NIA. The NIA would be, for part of these, there are going to be certain things in here, and it covers a large variety of things where some of the burden is going to be on the NIA to do some of these. We just don't have staff citywide to do some of this. But again, I've worked with the NIA. I think they know that if they have questions or concerns, or if there's something in here that they would like to know who to get in contact with, they can reach out to me. Throughout our meeting process, we have different departments or divisions show up, and so if they have questions, and we can start to build those relationships with the NIA and the city as well. So there isn't going to be a kind of a matrix that says this is who this responsibility falls on, and there may be ideas in here that the neighborhood doesn't love quite as much, but it's been 15 years since the plan was last adopted. The goal is to lay out some ideas that we can continue with for those next how many ever years till we get a new plan. So roundabout way of saying there isn't someone associated with each community building initiative in here.
Any other questions for staff? If not, this is one where we take public testimony, correct? And so we don't have an applicant necessarily, so move into public testimony. Is there anybody in the audience who'd like to speak? Please come forward. You have, state your name and address, and you have 4 minutes.
President of Historic Holliday Park. And we've had tons of meetings about this. We're 100% behind it. And all these decisions you just heard, you wouldn't believe the amount of conversations we had about it and the arguments we had over it. In the end, we just said, yeah, these are all these wonderful historic things that we'd love to have, but we need to get our neighborhood back together and make it where it's improving, going forward. And so we were saying, how can we spread the wealth and get as much done as possible? So we made some really hard decisions. And we said, brick sidewalks, gone, right? Let's get, one, they weren't being maintained. I mean, a lot of them, there were grass growing over them. So we said, let's go get some stuff done. Let's get some really nice sidewalks in there. Before we couldn't even walk on them, much less ADA compliant. That was a pipe dream. Now we can walk on them and they're ADA compliant, and that's great. And this is going to make a huge difference in our neighborhood, a huge difference. And we had people walk the neighborhood and write down what's the worst place and what's the next worst place and what's the next worst place. And we worked with them to say, here's where we want to put our money. And we were very involved in where we're putting our money, very involved. And then at the very end, I think, when we finally did the final, even though we'd had all these different arguments, it was unanimous almost at the end. This is what we're going to do. So we are 100% behind it. And these guys can tell you all the arguments we had. Why does it cost so much to do this? You know. So I hope you guys support this. It really means a lot to the neighborhood. I mean, the neighborhood association took off when we found out we'd won this thing, and all of a sudden the empowerment was huge. So thank you, and I hope you approve this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Name and address?
Yes, please.
John Jacobs at 1263 Southwest Western Avenue. We're in that second group of getting things done. And I was one of the people who was very vocal. And unfortunately, last couple of meetings I couldn't make it because it conflicted with other stuff. But what Wayne said is true. We have had a lot of engagement with Bryson and a lot of other people, including community engagement people, police, city planners, engineers, parks and services. We've had all of them at these meetings to try to understand what do we have authority over, what don't we have authority over, what can we ask for, what is outside of the purviews, and then what are the pros and cons of all of these options, and the questions like, you know, well, so if we want to keep our brick, what does that mean? And, you know, can we do a half and half? Can we cover the cost difference? Can we went through all of those things. And there are a lot of options that weren't available just because of the way the bureaucracy is set up. You don't have that flexibility. So, you know, as Wayne said, we made some very hard decisions. But the ultimate goal has been to make it a safe neighborhood again, and not safe just from, you know, oh, we have gunshots coming up street over, but safe as in my mother is 91 years old and has a walker, and she cannot walk from our house to the park because the sidewalks are not level enough. Even though I work very hard to maintain, and I do have brick in front of mine, you know, I've agreed to have the brick removed. No, I'm taking that brick and reusing it on my property someplace else, but I recognize the fact that the safety of people going across in front of my house, and I have the biggest house on that street, you know, is important. And so I know a lot of people will go, oh, but you're changing the historic and you're doing this and you're doing that. And frankly, I'm going to curse here. Screw that. History is important. I have a 135-year-old house that I just spent $34,000 to put in windows that look like they were always there, to make sure that it holds its integrity, yet won't leak out, you know, all of my money and heat. We need the ability to do that type of thing to our neighborhood, not just our houses. because right now, we don't have community. We don't have community because we can't reliably move around this neighborhood. We have a lot of people who are handicapped, a lot of people who are elderly, a lot of people who have younger families. And we, have the problem of they can't take their baby strollers for the same reason my mom can't take her walker. So I really hope that you will look at this effort that we have put into this in an entire year of almost yelling at one another to come to a consensus as trying to build community with the good and the bad. So we hope that you will approve this. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience that'd like to speak on this agenda item? If not, we will close the public hearing and move into discussion by commissioners. I just have an interesting note on this. I have a letter from my great-grandpa in 1915 to my great-aunt who actually lived in this neighborhood, apparently. Unfortunately, now it's a parking lot, but so I thought it was kind of cool when I saw this come through that I've got a connection to the neighborhood.
I was born and raised in this area, walk to and from Topeka High, so I'm really excited to see this project happening in this area for sure.
It's nice to see a neighborhood take pride of ownership back and community ownership back. It's really nice to see in today's world. They want their neighborhood back. That's nice.
And I was also really pleased. I don't know if the picking different sections of the neighborhood is really a standard thing to see in neighborhood improvement plans, but I thought that was very good, and I'm very pleased to hear that that was prioritized by the people who actually live there too.
Yeah. Very thoughtfully laid out.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chairman, I've seen a lot of neighborhood plat. This is very solid. It's good work. And the most impressive thing was what I heard tonight, where take these guys for what they're saying is true, that they were a lot of engagement, a lot of involvement, and that's great. So good job.
We'd be up for a motion if there's no more discussion on the plan.
Move for approval.
Second? It's been moved and seconded. Any discussions on the motion? If not, would you please take the roll?
Mr. Tababin?
Aye.
Ms. Hannon?
Aye.
Ms. Pearson?
Aye.
Mr. Nager?
Aye.
Mr. Kaup?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Ms. Herron?
Aye.
Ms. Nelson?
Aye.
Mr. Dean?
Aye.
Motion passes 9-0.
Thank you. Good luck. Next up, discussion items. It doesn't look like we have any. Is that true? Nope. And no public do we have any public comment? And any communications from staff?
Two things, Mr. Chairman. First off, there is no January meeting, so we won't be meeting next month. And secondly,
Yeah, Dan's giving me the honor of breaking the tragic news that tonight is Mary Feeney's last planning commission meeting, which is the end of an era, and I guess people are going to let her retire so she can spend some time doing what she loves to do more than hanging out with us here on Monday evenings. But yeah, we wanted to get you something as staff to thank you for all your help and keeping us straight. Oh, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I can, I've known Mary for many, many years, and she's a very good person on top of being a very good attorney. And she has saved us from ourselves on a number of occasions that we probably don't appreciate how many times she's done that. In the old Metropolitan Planning Commission, and the city attorney's office didn't send anybody over to staff. the old Topeka Metropolitan Planning Commission, and when I was on the Shawnee County Planning Commission, same thing, the county councilor's office didn't attend. It is really important to have an attorney present during our deliberations, and Mary's done a really good job, so I appreciate her work.
Thank you.
Me too.
Luckily, this is televised, so you can still, on Monday evenings, watch. Yeah. Was that next communication?
That's it. Oh, Merry Christmas. That's it.
Okay. If that's it, we're adjourned.
All right.